The cold metal floor echoed with every step as Captain Ryan Hale was dragged through the grand hall of the Zoran Empire. Heavy chains bound his wrists, cutting into his skin, but he didn't cry out. His body was bruised, his face marked by dried blood, yet his eyes, those human eyes, still burned with defiance. Around him stood towering alien soldiers, 8 feet tall, their scales shining like molten steel under the harsh blue light. They looked at him with disgust, whispering in their sharp, hissing language. To them, he was not a man. He was prey, an animal who had dared to challenge their empire. At the far end of the hall sat the one they called the Queen of War, Zarina of Zoran. She sat on a throne carved from black crystal, her golden armor glowing faintly with energy. Her beauty was fierce, her gaze colder than space itself. Every movement she made was filled with strength. Every word she spoke was law. The moment Ryan was forced to his knees before her, the entire hall fell silent. Even the guards bowed their heads in fear. "So," she began, her voice deep and commanding, "this small creature is the human captain who destroyed my fleet near the Vega Rift?" Her words echoed through the chamber. The aliens around her growled in anger, but Ryan raised his head slowly, meeting her eyes without flinching. "I didn't destroy your fleet," he said in a rough, tired voice. "I defended my home." The room went still. No one dared speak to the queen like that. Zoran warriors were taught from birth to fear her wrath, but this human, this fragile being, spoke as if he feared nothing. Zarina studied him closely. His uniform was torn, his lips split, his hands trembling slightly. He was not powerful, not in the way her kind measured power, but there was something strange in his face, something unbroken. "Defended," she repeated, standing up slowly. Her armor glowed brighter as she descended the steps of her throne. "You destroyed 5 of my warships with 1 vessel. You killed over 1,000 of my soldiers. Tell me, human, what weapon did you use?" Ryan looked up, his mouth twitching into a faint smile. "The kind you can't steal," he said. "It's called desperation." The hall erupted in laughter and anger. One of the Queen's generals slammed his staff against the floor, shouting, "Insolent beast! How dare you speak such words before the Queen?" But Zarina lifted her hand and the hall fell silent again. Her golden eyes narrowed. For a long, tense moment, she just looked at him. Then slowly she smiled, not kindly but curiously. "You have courage," she said, her voice softer now though still cold. "Or maybe madness. I wonder which keeps you alive." Ryan didn't answer. He stood as straight as his chains allowed, breathing heavily, his jaw tight. Inside, he was exhausted. Days of interrogation, no food, no rest, but he refused to kneel completely. He knew they wanted to break him. He knew that if he gave in, Earth would have no symbol left, and that, he decided, would not happen. The Queen circled around him like a predator inspecting her prey. "Tell me," she said quietly, "why fight against an empire you cannot defeat? You knew the odds. You knew your world would fall." Ryan met her gaze again. "Because some things," he said, his voice steady, "are worth fighting for. Even if you lose." Something shifted in the Queen's face, a flicker of emotion too quick to name. She turned away suddenly, her expression hidden by her helmet. "Take him to the arena," she ordered. "If he wants to fight, let him fight." The guards grabbed him by the arms and began to drag him away. Ryan didn't struggle this time. His body was weak, but his spirit burned brighter than ever. As the great doors closed behind him, Zarina stood staring at the place where he had knelt. No other being had ever spoken to her like that. No one had ever looked at her without fear, and for the first time in her long reign, the Queen of Zoran felt something she didn't understand. Was it anger? Curiosity? Or the first spark of admiration for a man who refused to bow, even before a queen who ruled the stars? She didn't know yet, but soon she would. The roar of the alien crowd echoed through the massive arena of Zoran. It was not built for sport. It was built for execution. The metal walls glowed red from the heat of the twin suns, and the scent of blood lingered in the air like smoke. Thousands of Zoran citizens filled the stands, their eyes glowing in excitement. They had come to see the defeated human captain die. In the center of the arena stood Ryan Hale. His wrists were no longer chained, but his body was weak. His clothes were torn and his bare feet pressed against the cold metal floor. Around him, banners of the Zoran Empire waved proudly. The people cheered for blood. At the highest balcony sat Queen Zarina, dressed in armor of gold and black. Her presence silenced even the wildest voices. When she raised her hand, the noise faded into stillness. Captain Ryan of Earth, her voice boomed through the air, calm yet commanding. You stand before the Zoran Empire. You have destroyed our ships, taken our soldiers, and defied our rule. By our law, your punishment is death, but she paused, her gaze sharp and unreadable. You claim to fight for something greater than victory. You claim to fight for home. Her tone softened for a heartbeat, almost curious. So fight now. Not for survival, not for mercy, but for that home you speak of. The crowd gasped. It was unheard of. A queen offering a trial by combat to a prisoner. Ryan looked up at her, confused but unafraid. You want me to fight? He asked. With what? Zarina smiled faintly. With your hands. That should be enough for a human who speaks so bravely. The gates on both sides of the arena opened with a hiss. From the left came two massive Zoran warriors, their bodies covered in black scales and glowing armor. They towered over Ryan, each carrying a blade the size of his arm. Ryan took a slow breath. His heart pounded, but his mind was clear. He remembered the faces of his fallen crew, the burning skies of Earth, and the promise he had made, to never kneel, no matter what. Zarina leaned forward on her throne. She wanted to see what made this fragile being defy a galaxy. A horn sounded. The first warrior roared and charged. Ryan moved just as the blade slashed through the air, missing his chest by inches. The wind of it knocked him down, but he rolled quickly, kicking sand into the alien's eyes. The warrior stumbled back, growling. Ryan jumped up and struck 1, 2, 3 punches, fast and desperate. His fists hit the alien's thick hide like stone, but he didn't stop. The crowd laughed, but the queen did not. The second warrior joined in, swinging his weapon with a roar. Ryan ducked again, but this time the blade caught his shoulder, leaving a deep cut. Pain shot through him, but he didn't fall. He gritted his teeth and used the blood as fuel. Come on, he shouted, anger flashing in his eyes. Is that all? The crowd grew louder. Some jeered, but others began to cheer, slowly, uncertainly. The human spirit was something they hadn't seen before. Ryan dodged another strike, grabbed a broken spear from the ground, and used it as a lever to flip the first alien over his shoulder. The creature crashed down with a thunderous boom. Before the second warrior could react, Ryan spun and struck his jaw with everything he had. The alien staggered, dropped his weapon, and fell. Silence filled the arena. Ryan stood panting, covered in sweat and blood. His knuckles were raw, his vision blurry. He had no weapon now, just the beating of his heart and the will that refused to die. From the balcony, Queen Zarina rose slowly. Her golden eyes were fixed on the man below. No one had ever defeated her warriors bare-handed. No alien, no soldier, no general. But this human, this fragile being of flesh and bone, had done it. Her lips parted slightly as she whispered to herself, almost in disbelief. He fights like a god trapped in mortal skin. Her general turned to her. Shall we execute him now, my queen? But Zarina did not answer immediately. She just stared at the man in the arena, standing tall, bleeding yet unbroken. And for the first time in her life, the warrior queen felt her heart stir with something she did not understand. Was it respect? Admiration? Or something deeper that she dared not name? As Ryan looked up toward the balcony, their eyes met for a brief, electric moment. Neither spoke. But in that silence, something powerful was born. A bond of two warriors from worlds apart. The crowd roared again, but the queen did not move. She turned away slowly and said in a low voice, Bring him to me. Alive. The guards hesitated. No one questioned her. And as the human was dragged out of the arena, still breathing, still defiant, every soldier of Zoran realized one thing. This human was no ordinary man. He was a reminder, a challenge, and perhaps the beginning of something that could change their queen forever. The heavy gates of the arena closed behind Ryan Hale as the silence of victory filled the air. His chest rose and fell like a stormed sea, sweat and blood dripping down his bruised skin. He could barely stand, yet he refused to fall. His knuckles were torn open, his shoulder bleeding from the cut, and his vision blurred at the edges, but his heart burned like fire. High above, Queen Zarina still stood on her balcony, her golden armor reflecting the twin suns. Her soldiers and council members surrounded her, all whispering in disbelief. No one could understand how a single human, a fragile creature of flesh and bone, had defeated two Zoran warriors bare-handed. It was impossible. It was madness. It was human. Ryan looked up at the stands. Thousands of alien eyes glowed blue. watching him in stunned silence. Just moments ago they had cheered for his death. Now they stared as if seeing something sacred. He didn't smile, didn't celebrate. He only straightened his back and raised his bloodied hand as if to say, "I am still here." The Queen's general stepped closer to her. "My queen, he must be destroyed. He is dangerous." His kind, Zarina lifted her hand to silence him. Her gaze never left the human. Something in her chest ached, a strange, unfamiliar pull. This man had no armor, no strength like her warriors, yet he fought with something greater than power. He fought with will. "Bring him forward," she ordered. The crowd gasped as the gates opened once more. Guards approached Ryan, but they didn't drag him this time. They walked beside him almost respectfully. When he reached the base of the Queen's throne, he looked up with tired eyes but unbroken spirit. Zarina descended the steps slowly, her long cape trailing behind her. She stopped in front of him, tall and radiant, the scent of metal and fire surrounding her. For a moment neither spoke. The silence was heavier than words. Finally she said softly, "You fight without fear." "Why?" Ryan swallowed, his throat dry. "Because fear doesn't help," he said simply. "It only slows you down." "I didn't have a choice." Zarina tilted her head slightly. "No choice?" He met her eyes. "When your home burns, when your people scream, you stop thinking. You stop feeling. You just fight." Her golden eyes studied him closely, searching for weakness, and found none. Only pain. Only truth. The Queen's voice lowered. "You're kind. You are strange. You are weak, yet you destroy fleets. You are small, yet you defy empires. What drives you?" Ryan took a deep breath. "Love," he said quietly. "Love for what's mine. For the people I promised to protect. Maybe you don't understand that." The words hit her harder than any weapon could. No one spoke to the Queen like that. No one dared. Yet she didn't punish him. Instead, her lips parted slightly in wonder. For years she had ruled through fear and power. She had conquered worlds but never truly understood what made someone fight. But this human, he fought not to win, not to survive, but because his heart refused to give up. Her general knelt beside her, whispering, "Shall we finish him, my queen?" "The people expect blood." Zarina turned her gaze toward her warriors, then back at Ryan. His body trembled from exhaustion, but his eyes, those stubborn, fire-filled eyes, still met hers. She spoke clearly, her voice echoing through the hall. "No, he has earned his life." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Even Ryan seemed surprised. "You're letting me go?" The Queen stepped closer, her voice low. "I said you earned it, not that you are free." Ryan frowned. "Then what do you want from me?" Her answer came in a tone so soft only he could hear it. "To understand you." For a long moment, they stood there, an alien queen and a human warrior bound not by chains, but by curiosity and respect. Then she turned sharply, her golden cape flowing behind her. "Take him to the palace," she commanded. "He is not a prisoner now. He is a guest of the crown." The guards hesitated but obeyed. As Ryan was led away, the Queen remained on the platform, her heart beating faster than it should. Her general looked uneasy. "Why, my queen? Why spare him?" Zarina's gaze stayed on the door where Ryan had disappeared. "Because for the first time," she whispered, "I have seen something I thought didn't exist. A mortal who fights like he was born for eternity." As the arena emptied, the sun dipped behind the alien mountains, casting long shadows across the city. And in those shadows, two fates, one human, one alien, had already begun to entwine. She didn't know it yet, he didn't either. But the galaxy was about to remember the day a human bled in an alien arena. And one not with power, but with heart. The palace of Zoran stood like a shining fortress under the twin moons, its walls glowing faint blue, made of crystal and metal fused by alien fire. Inside, the hallways stretched endlessly, lined with tall pillars carved with the victories of the warrior queen. Every symbol told a story of domination, worlds conquered, empires crushed. Yet that night the Queen's mind was not on her victories. It was on the human who had refused to kneel before her. Captain Ryan Hale sat in a quiet chamber surrounded by guards. The room was more like a prison dressed in gold. The bed was soft, the air warm, but he felt no comfort. His body ached from the battle, his knuckles swollen, his shoulder still bleeding beneath a rough bandage. But pain was not new to him. What bothered him was why he was still alive. No conqueror spared enemies. No queen spared a soldier who had defied her. Yet here he was, alive, clean, and given food that he hadn't tasted in days. Something was strange about all of this. Outside in the throne room, Queen Zarina stood before the great window staring at the stars. Her golden armor reflected the moonlight, but her mind was restless. She had fought 100 wars, faced countless enemies, but none had shaken her heart the way this human did. His strength wasn't in his muscles or weapons, it was in his spirit. Her advisor, General Theric, entered quietly. "My queen," he said, bowing low. The human rests. "Shall I prepare the execution for tomorrow?" "It will please the people." Zarina didn't turn to face him. "No," she said softly. The general looked up, shocked. "No? But the law—" "I am the law," she said sharply, cutting him off. Her voice was calm but filled with power. "And this man is not like the others," Theric frowned. "He is dangerous." Zarina's eyes softened. "So am I." For a moment, silence filled the room. The general bowed again, uneasy. He did not understand the queen's thoughts, but he dared not question her further. When he left, Zarina stood alone, her heart heavy with questions she couldn't answer. Why did she feel this strange pull toward a being from a lesser world? Why did his voice, his courage, echo in her mind? Finally, she ordered her guards, "Bring him to me. Now." Moments later, Ryan was led into the queen's private chamber. The room was vast, glowing with soft golden light. He hesitated as the guards left him alone with her. She turned to him slowly, her face calm but her eyes searching. "You should hate me," she said quietly. "I destroyed your fleet." Ryan met her gaze. "You did what you thought was right for your people. I did the same." For the first time, a faint smile touched her lips. "You speak of duty, not anger. Interesting." He shrugged lightly, wincing from pain. "Anger wastes energy. I'm short on that right now." The queen stepped closer, her footsteps silent on the glass floor. She looked at his hands, bloodied, bruised, yet steady. "Tell me, Captain," she said, her voice low, "how does a being like you keep fighting when all hope is gone?" Ryan took a slow breath. "Because if I stop fighting, then everything my people died for means nothing." His eyes were tired, but his words were strong. "You can break my body, but not what I believe in." Zarina felt something stir inside her, a strange warmth that battled against the cold armor of her heart. She had ruled by power all her life. She had been feared, obeyed, even worshipped, but never respected. Not like this. He didn't see her as a goddess. He saw her as another warrior, and in that moment her breath caught. Her voice lowered to a whisper, barely audible even to herself. "I wish he were my husband." The words escaped before she could stop them. It was not meant for anyone to hear, but one of the guards standing outside froze, wide-eyed. He pretended not to have heard, his head bowed low. Ryan looked up. "Did you say something?" Zarina blinked, turning away quickly. "Nothing," she said firmly, hiding the flush that touched her golden cheeks. "You need rest." He tilted his head slightly, a faint smirk on his bruised lips. "You sure about that? You look more tired than me." Her eyes widened in surprise, then softened again. "You're bold for a man who just survived death," she said, her tone half amused. He smiled faintly. "You're curious for a queen who just conquered a world." Zarina turned toward the window again, gazing at the stars. "Perhaps curiosity is more dangerous than war." Ryan looked at her for a long moment, then said softly, "Sometimes it's what keeps us alive." The queen didn't reply. But when he was escorted out moments later, her heart beat faster than any battle had ever made it. She watched him disappear down the corridor, whispering once more to herself, "Strange human, why can't I stop thinking about you?" And under the cold glow of the twin moons, the warrior queen of 1,000 victories realized that, for the first time in her life, she had met someone who had conquered her. The night sky above the Zoran palace shimmered with silver light. 2 moons hung like watchful eyes, and the cold wind carried the distant echo of alien songs. Deep inside the royal chambers, the grand hall slept in silence, except for one room where the Queen of Zoran stood awake, lost in thoughts she could no longer control. Queen Zarina had faced death 1,000 times. She had seen planets burn, cities crumble, and enemies beg for mercy. Yet nothing had unsettled her heart like the human she had chosen to spare. His courage haunted her dreams. His voice echoed in her mind. She told herself it was curiosity, but she knew it was something deeper, something she wasn't ready to name. Down the corridor, Captain Ryan Hale sat on the balcony of his guarded room, staring at the strange stars. His arm still ached, his ribs throbbed, but his spirit was calm. The Zoran guards had given him food, clothes, even a medical salve for his wounds. He didn't understand why the Queen would show kindness after so much bloodshed. Maybe it was pity, or maybe she saw something in him that reminded her of herself. As he sat there, the door slid open with a soft hum. A figure stepped in quietly. Ryan turned, surprised. It was her. Queen Zarina had shed her armor. She wore a long robe of silver silk that shimmered under the moonlight. Without her crown and armor, she looked less like a goddess and more like a woman, still powerful but softer, almost human. He stood up slowly. "Your Majesty," he said cautiously. "I didn't expect a visit from the ruler of an empire." She smiled faintly. "And I didn't expect a human to survive my warriors," she replied, her voice calm but thoughtful. "It seems we both like surprises." Ryan chuckled weakly, but his eyes remained watchful. "So what brings you here, Queen Zarina? Don't tell me you couldn't sleep." Her smile faded a little. "You're not wrong," she admitted. "I fought all my life, Captain. Every battle, every conquest, it all felt right. But after today, I find myself questioning everything." Ryan's brow furrowed. "Because of me?" She looked at him then, really looked at him. "You fought with no armor, no weapon. You bled, yet you never gave up. You fought as if the stars themselves depended on it. Why?" Ryan sighed, turning toward the night sky. "Because they did," he said softly. "When Earth fights, we don't fight to win power or land. We fight because losing means everything we love dies. Family, home, hope." He paused, his voice quieter now. "You wouldn't understand that." "You've never lost." The Queen's gaze dropped to the floor. "You're wrong," she said after a long silence. "I've lost more than you can imagine. Every world I conquered, I buried something of myself. My people call me invincible, but inside I am tired, Captain. Tired of being the weapon everyone fears." For the first time, Ryan saw not a queen, not a conqueror, but a lonely woman trapped behind gold and duty. He took a slow step closer. "Then stop fighting," he said gently. "You have the power to change everything. You could end wars, not start them." She looked up at him, her golden eyes glimmering. "And what then?" "Peace is fragile. Power is the only language the stars understand." "Maybe," Ryan replied, his tone calm yet firm. "But sometimes one act of mercy can echo louder than 1,000 victories." The Queen didn't speak. She just stood there studying him. In his eyes, she saw something she hadn't seen in years. Truth. Not fear, not flattery, not calculation. Just truth. She moved closer, close enough that he could feel the warmth of her breath. Her voice softened. "You speak boldly for someone who stands in the house of his enemy." Ryan smiled faintly. "Maybe you're not my enemy anymore." Her heart skipped a beat. No one had ever spoken to her like that. Not as a queen, but as a woman. The air between them grew heavy with something unspoken. She wanted to reach out, to touch his face, to understand the strange pull between them. But she stopped herself. A queen could not feel what she was feeling. Not for a human. Not for a prisoner still. Her voice trembled when she whispered, "You are a strange man. Captain Hale, and you," he said softly, "are not as heartless as you pretend to be." For a long moment neither moved. Only the twin moons watched them from above, bathing the room in pale silver light. Then the Queen turned away, her robe flowing behind her. "Rest well, human," she said quietly. "Tomorrow the council will demand your fate." "But I will decide it," Ryan nodded. "Whatever you decide, I'll face it." As she reached the doorway, she paused. Without turning, she whispered to herself, "That's what I fear." When she left, the room felt colder. Ryan stood alone, staring at the stars, not knowing that somewhere in the palace, the most powerful woman in the galaxy was lying awake, her heart battling against the crown she wore. And though she didn't say it aloud, the truth was already written across her soul. She no longer saw him as an enemy. She saw him as something she had never dared to want. The morning dawned cold and quiet over the shining towers of Zoran Prime. Golden sunlight spilled across the palace halls. But inside the Queen's chamber, the air felt heavy with doubt. Queen Zarina stood before a mirror, her reflection divided, half warrior, half woman. Her golden eyes burned with conflict. The council would meet soon to decide the fate of the human, Captain Ryan Hale. Tradition demanded his execution. Her heart whispered otherwise. Serena's attendant entered quietly. "Your Majesty," she said, bowing deeply. "The High Council awaits. The human is in chains." Serena nodded without answering. Her mind was miles away, back to the night before when Ryan had spoken to her with a voice full of truth and courage. She had spent hours trying to silence his words, but they echoed endlessly in her heart. One act of mercy can echo louder than 1,000 victories. As she walked through the grand corridor, every step echoed like thunder. Soren guards bowed as she passed, their armor gleaming. To them, she was the symbol of power and control, the woman who never hesitated, who never felt weakness. If only they knew how much she was trembling inside. The council chamber was vast and circular, filled with the oldest and most powerful of her kind. When she entered, they all rose, their heads bowed in respect. In the center of the room, under a beam of white light, knelt the human, bruised, chained, but unbroken. Ryan lifted his head when she appeared. Their eyes met. For a brief moment, the world fell silent. Counselor Vekthar, a tall, cold-eyed general, spoke first. "Your Majesty," he said, "the human trespassed on sacred land, killed 20 of our warriors, and humiliated our royal guard. The punishment must be death." Another voice, sharp and cruel, added, "If we show mercy, our enemies will see it as weakness." "You taught us that, my queen." Serena listened quietly, her face expressionless, though her heart throbbed painfully. She looked at Ryan, his head held high despite the chains, his gaze steady. He wasn't afraid. That unshaken courage touched something deep inside her. "Bring him forward," she commanded. The guards obeyed, pulling Ryan to his feet and bringing him before her. He stood tall, his wrists bound, his breathing heavy but calm. Serena rose from her throne and stepped closer. Her golden robe trailed behind her like liquid fire. "Captain Ryan Hale," she said formally, "you stand accused of defying the Zoran Empire. Do you have anything to say before your judgment is passed?" Ryan met her eyes. "I didn't come here to fight you," he said quietly, "but I won't apologize for surviving." A murmur swept through the council, but Serena lifted her hand, silencing them. "You killed many of my warriors. They attacked first," he replied. "I fought to live." "Just as you would." The queen's eyes softened slightly. "You speak as though you know me." Ryan gave a faint smile. "Maybe I do. You wear armor like a wall, but you're not made of stone, are you?" A dangerous silence followed his words. The council gasped. Speaking that way to the queen was unthinkable. But instead of anger, Serena felt something else. A strange warmth spread through her chest. "Enough," said Counselor Vekthar sharply. "Your Majesty, the human insults you." "End this." Serena turned toward the council. "You speak of strength," she said, her voice echoing across the chamber. "But tell me, is strength only measured by how many we destroy? Or can it be measured by what we choose to protect?" The council fell silent. None dared to answer. Her gaze returned to Ryan. For a long time she said nothing. Then slowly she raised her hand. "By the authority of the Zoran crown," she declared, "the human Captain Ryan Hale shall not be executed." The chamber erupted in disbelief. Some shouted protests, others stared in shock. Serena's voice grew colder, sharper. "Instead, he will live under royal protection until I decide otherwise." Vekthar stepped forward, anger flashing in his eyes. "You would risk everything for this human?" Serena's gaze hardened. "I risk nothing. But perhaps for once I choose mercy over pride." Ryan's heart pounded. He didn't understand why she was doing this, but he could see the courage it took for her to defy her own people. He bowed his head slightly. "Thank you," he whispered. Their eyes met once more, and for the first time, there was no barrier between them. As the guards led him away, Serena stood alone in the middle of the chamber, her crown heavy on her head. The council would plot against her now, she knew it. Her decision had shaken the empire, but when she thought of his eyes, clear, strong, human, she felt something she hadn't felt in years: peace. Outside, the twin suns rose over Zoran Prime, painting the sky in gold. Somewhere deep within her heart, Queen Serena whispered a truth she would never admit aloud. "He is my enemy no more, and I fear I will never forget him." The days that followed were filled with unease. The palace that once echoed with songs of victory now buzzed with whispers of rebellion. Many of the queen's generals could not accept what she had done. To them, mercy was weakness. But to Queen Serena, mercy had become a quiet form of strength, a strength she had learned from one man, the human, Captain Ryan Hale. Ryan was kept in the royal gardens, no longer chained but still watched. The Zoran soldiers looked at him with a mix of hatred and awe. He spent most of his time by the fountains, staring at the strange alien sky and wondering if Earth still remembered him. But even far from home, he didn't feel completely alone anymore. Somewhere in that vast palace, someone was fighting for him. One evening, as the red sun dipped below the horizon, Zarina came to him again. She wore her royal armor, gleaming like liquid fire, but her face looked tired, heavy with unspoken thoughts. Ryan stood when he saw her. "Your Majesty," he greeted, his voice calm. She looked at him for a long time before speaking. "The council has turned against me," she said quietly. "They say I have forgotten my duty. They want war again, against Earth." Ryan's heart tightened. "War? Why? You just saved one human's life." Zarina shook her head. "They see your survival as a threat. They say mercy toward a human is weakness toward humanity." She paused, her voice breaking slightly. "They are preparing to invade your world, Ryan. They want me to lead the attack." Ryan took a step closer, his voice steady. "And will you?" For a long moment she said nothing. Then, with quiet pain, she whispered, "No, I won't." Her golden eyes met his, and in that gaze was everything she had never said. "I have seen enough blood. I have conquered stars and lost my soul in the process. But you," she breathed softly, "you reminded me what it means to fight for something pure." Before either could speak again, a loud explosion shook the palace, the air filled with smoke and screams. Guards rushed in, shouting that the council's loyalists had turned on the queen. Zarina's expression hardened. "They're attacking the throne," she said. Ryan grabbed one of the fallen guard's weapons, a long, spear-like blade, and stood beside her. "Then let's fight," he said with a grin. For the first time she smiled, an honest, unguarded smile. "You're still reckless, human." "Maybe," he replied, "but I don't run from a fight." The halls of the palace erupted into chaos. Alien warriors charged through the golden corridors, and side by side, the queen and the human fought as one. Zarina moved with deadly grace, her energy blades cutting through betrayal, while Ryan fought with raw human strength, his every move driven by instinct and will. When the fighting reached the throne room, Counselor Vekthar stood waiting with his army. "You've doomed us all, Zarina," he shouted. "You let a human corrupt you." Zarina raised her sword. "No," she said fiercely. "He reminded me who I am." The battle that followed was brutal. Ryan was wounded, blood streaking his face, but he refused to fall. And when Vekthar lunged at the queen, Ryan stepped between them, taking the strike meant for her. Zarina's scream shattered the air. She struck Vekthar down with a single blow, her blade glowing white-hot. The enemy forces fell back in fear, their rebellion crushed. When the battle ended, the hall lay in ruins. Zarina dropped to her knees beside Ryan, her hands trembling as she held him. His breathing was weak but steady. "You're hurt," she whispered desperately. He gave a faint smile. "I've been worse." Tears shimmered in her golden eyes. "Why did you do that?" "Because," he said softly, "you finally stopped being alone. I couldn't let you lose that." Her hand cupped his face. For once, the mighty Queen of Zoran looked helpless. "Ryan," she whispered, voice trembling, "if you were one of us, I would make you my king." He smiled faintly. "And if you were human, I'd marry you." For a long moment, neither spoke. The stars beyond the shattered roof looked down on them. Two warriors from different worlds bound by something stronger than war. Zarina pressed her forehead gently against his. "You've changed me," she said in a whisper that only the stars could hear. "No empire will ever make me forget you." Ryan's eyes closed as exhaustion took him, but his lips curved into a peaceful smile. "You'll be fine," he murmured. "You're stronger than you know." She held him until dawn broke, until the first light of the twin suns touched their faces. That morning the rebellion ended. The queen stood before her people, no crown, no armor, only truth. "From this day," she declared, "Zoran will no longer rule through fear. We will honor strength but also compassion." Her people, seeing the courage in her eyes, bowed, and though she never spoke his name aloud again, every star she conquered after that, she whispered a single promise to the wind. For the man who fought barehanded and made a queen wish she were only a woman.